Hi everyone, thank you for joining me today. This is the first part of living with Down syndrome, and today we're going to be looking at just the start of my journey of being a mum to a daughter, for those of you who know her, Caris, with Down syndrome. But before we get into that, I just want to first take time to say thank you so much for everyone who has contacted me just to encourage me, to say you're looking forward to the series, just want to see the rest of the family. You know, it's just a lovely way to keep connected, especially during the lockdown time. And during this time where the pandemic brings so much fear, brings so much isolation, so many concerns, so many worries and anxieties, it's just nice to take time out just to slow things down and just to see familiar faces. So thank you so much for everyone who's contacted me. It's really been nice just hearing from you all. And also I want to say thank you also to those who have subscribed to the channel and just wanting to stay connected, just to find out how I'm doing, how the family's doing. And I just hope that as we get into the experiences, sharing the many highs and lows, that you would be encouraged, that you will be challenged, that you'll be strengthened, that you will be motivated and inspired, ultimately to continue. So for those who have children with special needs, you'll probably be able to identify with quite a lot of get my teeth back in, quite a lot of the experiences that I'm going to share, feelings, and I appreciate that everyone has their own journey, so it may not be everything you can relate to, but you can certainly appreciate where I've come from. And for those who know someone who has special needs, I pray that it serves as an encouragement, and that you will be able to also identify with what I have to say. Hopefully it will provide some answers of how you can perhaps relate to the individuals. But ultimately it's just really a forum where we can just sit down and share. Okay, so now that we've got the introduction kind of over, let's go straight into it. So first of all, I just want to say that when I was about, I don't know, probably about 17, 18, I wrote down my dreams of where I wanted to be by the age of 25. And you know, when you're a teenager, 25 just sounds like a long way away. And I wrote 4 things down, and I achieved 2 out of the 4 things by the age of 25. I said I wanted to be married, I wanted to have 2 children, and I also said I wanted to have a house, and I wanted to study child psychology. Still not studied the child psychology, so and I'm a lot older than 25. Shh, don't tell anyone. So that's one thing that I'm still yet to do. But by the time I reached 25, I was able to tick 2 of those things off my list, and I was married and I had a house. And then by the time I was 29, I fell pregnant, and I was so happy. And I knew from day one that I was pregnant. So, you know, as soon as, I missed my cycle, it's like, oh, something's wrong here. And yet, sure enough, I was pregnant, and it was a really fantastic experience for me. I thoroughly enjoyed being pregnant. I didn't have any nausea, I didn't have any morning sickness. I didn't have the usual aches and pains or experiences that other ladies would talk about. I just enjoyed it. And after I had Caris, I actually missed being pregnant. And I thought, wow, I could actually be a surrogate mother. I had loved the experience so much. And one of the things I did when I was pregnant, because I knew really, 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 really early on that I was pregnant, I was praying strategically at every stage of the pregnancy. So I had this Bible tract that I used to give to people who were contemplating abortion or weren't sure if they should, keep their child. It was one of those tracts that was very, very informative, and it helped encourage young ladies to think more seriously rather than just go into making a really big decision. And this track, it just talked about the different stages of life, development of the child inside the womb, and it just brought the reality of this is not a thing, but this is a human being, this is life inside of you. And I had kept that track with me, and when I fell pregnant, I used that track to form my prayer points throughout the pregnancy. And every time something else was being formed and developed, I was praying strategically for the life of my baby. And when I was 4.5 months pregnant, I had a pregnancy scare, and even though I wasn't in pain, the fact that there was blood, I was very scared and thought, I think I may be miscarrying. Fortunately, that was not the case, but there were lots of things that was going on at that stage. So within a 2-week period, I had a pregnancy scare and I was put on bed rest. The day I returned from the hospital, we had spent all day at the hospital, and I came home, and my husband had collapsed in front of me, and he had a stroke, and we were back at that same hospital. And fortunately, it was a mild stroke, but at the time, we didn't know what it was. So that was just, it was a very traumatic time. It was a very scary time, to be honest. And then on top of all of that, we moved houses. And a few days after moving into the house, we got burgled. So we had 3 major incidents that happened in the space of 2 weeks. And it was just literally one after the other. I just felt like the Job experience was happening. But God kept us through that period, and we got through that. And after that unusual time of a few weeks to a month, went back on track to enjoying the pregnancy and getting sorted and relaxed and comfortable, unpacking in the new home. And then towards the end of the pregnancy, realised that the baby was still breech, so I had to have an elective C-section. And I just thought, okay, these things happen. It is what it is. And me being the planner, for those who know me, we went into hospital, and I had everything there was that I needed. So I had the usual overnight bag and things that I would need for my hospital stay. Well, I shouldn't say overnight, because I was going to be in there for a few days, but I included things like a notepad and pen and a little bedside clock, all those things, because we're talking about 2002 people. So I hadn't quite let go of the paper and pen era, and I just recorded everything. I just wrote down everything. And after the baby was born, found out, oh, it's a girl, and elated, over the moon. And I noticed for the first 12 hours after giving birth that she wasn't latching on. You know, I wanted to breastfeed, and it didn't matter how much I tried and I offered, you know, she just was not latching on. And I just kept recording just to notate how long, you know, it was going to be before she actually fed. And I kept telling the nurses, you know, the baby's not feeding, the baby's not feeding. And after 12 hours, I thought, right, enough is enough. You know I'm a new mum, I know I don't know everything there is to know, but maternal instincts just told me something wasn't wrong, you know, the baby should be feeding. So at the 12-hour mark, I kept a lot of noise, and I basically, you know, was quite firm and just said, look, somebody somewhere has to take notice of me. And then I had, you know, people scurrying around me, trying to show me how to feed the baby, etc. And that was quite key in terms of Caris not latching on. But at the time, I didn't have any idea why. And the following day, after she was born, I'm not sure if it was the midwife or a nurse, but it was one of the professionals, and they were just, you know, playing with the baby, had the baby on the lap, and basically, I'll show you what they did. They had Caris on their lap, okay? So supposing I'm the professional holding her, and they had her facing them, and they put their two fingers up like that so that she could latch on. So they wanted her to latch on to the two fingers with her hands. And what Caris did was she went to hold the fingers, and as she went to hold the fingers, her fingers just went like that. So instead of gripping, it just went like that, and you know, she almost fell back onto the floor. And the automatic reaction was to just grab her, and you know, we just watched it and just thought, oh, that's a bit, you know, a bit scary. But we just you know, kind of as new parents, we just left it. So that was the day after she was born. And then for the next few days, the doctors and the nurses and everybody was kind of like just, you know, doing their usual rounds and doing their, you know, looking after me and the aftercare, etc. And then at day 4, when I should have been discharged from the hospital, that is when they came to me and they said, we think that your baby has Down syndrome, but the only way we can actually confirm that is by giving her a blood test. So they had to get my consent, and of course I consented to that, and they ran the blood test, and the blood test came back positive for Down syndrome. And the initial reaction, I was on my own at the time, my husband wasn't there, and I had to just kind of process this initial shock. And then they basically said, okay, well, because she has Down syndrome, what we're going to have to do now is carry out routine tests on her heart, because that's the protocol. So they carried out the routine test on the heart, and it came back that she had a hole in her heart. And I remembered when her dad came to the hospital later that day, and I broke the news to him, and my initial reaction after I told him, I just sat there and cried for about 15 minutes. I think I was in autopilot mode, and I was in a sense of shock when I first heard the news, and I just kept myself busy. But then when he came, and I repeated what they had shared with me, I think that was when it sunk in, my baby has Down syndrome. And you know, nobody expects to be pregnant go full term and then their baby has some sort of complication, or you just don't plan these things, you don't think of these things. And for a split second, I just had a whole host of emotions, that I had to then sit down and process. So what should have been the happiest day of my life as a mother became a day of roller coaster emotions. And I had the doctor come round the following day when he was doing his routine checks, and he apologised because he said this is what they're trained for as doctors. As soon as the babies are born, they do their initial checks and they check to make sure that they have all of their digits, the fingers and toes. And the other thing they check for in their routine check is for Down syndrome. And somehow it was missed, and he was apologising, and I said to him, look, please don't apologise, you're human, these things happen. It's not to say that the baby isn't here, she's here, she's breathing, we can get through this. And I just want to encourage anyone out there, you have these big ideas of, you're going to have a baby and this is what it's going to look like and this is what the future will hold for you. And sometimes it doesn't always go according to plan. And with that can come discouragement, confusion, anger, feelings of failure, lots and lots of questions. Why God? Why me? What have I done? Are you punishing me? This is not fair. There's so many things that goes through your mind. But I've learned through experience that nothing happens by chance, nothing is coincidental. And whatever happens, even if it's not according to your plan, God is in control. And I just want to finish off this segment with one verse from Romans chapter 8. And it says, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. And it's such a familiar scripture for those who read the Bible. And it's something that we do sometimes reel off and we recite without even thinking about it. But in this instance, that was one scripture that came back to me. And it was just reminding me that this was not a mistake. Just like how I prayed throughout the entire pregnancy, and I was committing this baby to God. I was giving that, the gift to God and saying, God, whatever purpose you have for the baby, I'm giving this baby back to you. And when I saw Caris, for me, I was the happiest mother. I was so overjoyed. And even in the light of her being diagnosed with Down syndrome, I didn't know what it was. My husband had to leave the hospital to go home to download, the information, print it off and bring it back to the hospital. And we just read to see, what is Down syndrome? What does this mean? And we educated ourselves and we wanted to just be able to be the best parents, to say, okay, well, God, you have entrusted her into our life. You have given us a baby who has this genetic condition, but what do you expect us to do with it? What do you expect us to do now with her life? How are we going to be the best parents? So we wanted to put ourselves in a position to not be ignorant, not to have any preconceived ideas, not to put any limitations on her. And once we educated ourselves through reading the literature, we realised in control, and that's what I want you to take away from this section, that God is in control. So be encouraged. Until next week, just know that nothing is by mistake, that everything works out together for the good for those who love God. Okay, until next week, bye bye.